According to Bitcoin's historic 4-year cycles, we're about to enter the acceleration phase. The part after the Bitcoin halving, where Bitcoin's price goes from explosive to insane. Bitcoin's price generally peaks 12 to 18 months after the halving, which happened in April of this year, meaning we still have about 4 months until we enter this period.
2024, we end around 100K, and 2025, I think 250 to a million, and in that range. And I know that's a big range, but anyone that's been in Bitcoin for a while can appreciate kind of where I'm coming from there.
If that doesn't get you bullish, 3 of the largest institutions in the world came out with reports and price predictions this week saying that Bitcoin's price would go to between 200K and $1 million a coin. Today, I'll go through the 5 catalysts that take Bitcoin from 100K to 250K in 2025. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Let's go. This last week in Bitcoin has been a roller coaster, but that doesn't matter because if you zoom out, you'll see that Bitcoin's price is displaying the same price action that it has from other halvings, which means we're about ready to take off. Which leads us to our first catalyst, previous price performance after halvings.
So here we are above 100,000. What's a legit target for 2025 for Bitcoin?
We think it's going to follow a similar halving cycle that we've seen in the past that would imply something around 250,000 for Bitcoin in 2025. And on top of that, we have a Trump put because Bitcoin is potentially a strategic reserve asset for the US government.
Don't you love it when Tommy Lee makes those bullish statements and has no emotion on his face whatsoever? Cathie Wood's firm, ARK, did a huge research report on Bitcoin's historical price movements before and after halvings. Since the halving in April of 2024, Bitcoin's price has increased by 56%, which puts it right in line with behavior from its price performance at the same time in other halvings, which were up between 53% and 122% respectively. If it continues to follow the same patterns that we've seen in previous cycles from previous lows, Bitcoin should 15x. Which they predict will bring its price to $243,000 per coin in 2025. This analysis checks out with other analysts like Rational Root, who say that 16% after the halving is when Bitcoin typically makes its move. And it typically makes its move roughly 759 days after the previous all-time lows. Price catalyst number 2. When the largest asset manager says that you should own 2 to 3% of Bitcoin in your portfolio, you should pay attention. In a recent memo, BlackRock said a portfolio allocation of 2% to Bitcoin is reasonable. Their research has also indicated that the Mag 7 stocks represent more risk than even Bitcoin in people's portfolios right now, as they own a majority of the share of the S&P 500. They said that Bitcoin is uncorrelated and has the potential to become even more uncorrelated in the future. They called it a tactical hedge against specific risks. Those risks are debasement from the government, who is printing money at insane levels. BlackRock says that Bitcoin has even better characteristics than gold. And it's for this reason that Bitwise believes that Bitcoin will be larger than gold and will overtake the $18 trillion gold market by 2029. But let's go back to BlackRock's 2% allocation for a second. Analyst Joe Burnett, head of research at Unchained, did some math for the football guys like me in the back of the class. He said that if there's $900 trillion of assets in the world, and 2% make that allocation to Bitcoin, well, that gives us a market cap of $18 trillion. Or in his math, he says $857,000 per coin. This Jesse Croceus chart keeps coming back up, which shows that Bitcoin is eating into the $900 trillion asset market. And as the analog capital store of value market is being demonetized into digital capital, Bitcoin will continue to grow as a percentage of this pie. But here was the most important part from BlackRock's report. Investors need to think about Bitcoin's expected returns in a different way. It has no underlying cash flows for estimating future returns. What matters? The extent of adoption. And you know what's going to drive adoption? The President of the United States saying that it's going to be the global leader in crypto.
You're embracing crypto, very different from the previous administration. Strategic Petroleum Reserve like for crypto?
Yeah, I think so. We're going to do something great with crypto because we don't want China or anybody else, and not just China, but others are embracing it, and we want to be the head.
This is the third catalyst, nation-state adoption driven by the United States. It's not just being driven from the president at the podium, but from the entire staff and cabinet that's supporting him.
David Sachs is the icing on the cake of Silicon Valley's infiltration of Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., they thought they were the big brother and that they were going to beat up on little brother Silicon Valley. And they've been coming at them over and over and over and over again. They overregulated them. They debanked them. They mocked them in the media. They called them stupid. They said they were greedy. They did all these things to them. And Silicon Valley sat there and was a punching bag for a decade. And now Silicon Valley is having the last laugh, because if you look and see throughout this entire administration, it's like Peter Thiel's entire ecosystem has now successfully penetrated Washington, D.C., and they're in charge. So if you go and you look, J.D. Vance is the vice president of the United States. David Sachs is the AI and crypto czar. But Elon Musk is basically like the consigliere to the president, and he's everywhere, right? You just go through all this stuff and you realize, wait, Vivek Ramaswamy, he's running Doge. All of these people, Thiel invested in them. They were in the orbit. They were at PayPal, etc. And so what I think has happened is that we have very intelligent people who've been hyper successful. If you look at the cabinet, it's the most number of billionaires that's ever been in a cabinet.
That's what I was going to say.
Bitwise believes this is going to drive global adoption of Bitcoin to double in countries across the world in 2025. The United States has the lead, but China is close behind, and the arms race is just beginning to heat up. Which brings me to catalyst number 4, the perpetual bid from ETFs and retail buyers. And for this, we're going to bring in CJ Constantinos from an exclusive interview that I had with him specifically for listeners of this show. He believes that the perpetual bid is going to decrease the downturns and increase the outperformance in the up markets.
I think we're going to see outsized returns and put the diminishing returns to rest. And we're going to see diminishing pullbacks. We're used to that 50, 60, 70% pullback. We might only get that 20, 30% pullback because we have a perpetual bid of funds flow, not just from consumers through the ETFs, but now through corporations, the federal government, state governments, cities and municipalities, and other nations as well. The marketplace dynamics are changing. I know that's something that happens every cycle. We feel like this time is different, but as somebody who's now been through 3 halvings, I can tell you that this is definitely different. This is the monetization of Bitcoin. Bitcoin starting out as a magic internet money and then going to a digital gold and then the reserve asset of the internet economy. And now the most pristine form of collateral in the world, with institutions, corporations, nations recognizing it for what it is, which is the monetization of Bitcoin, which changes that marketplace dynamic. I think Bitcoin is going to have an exciting future, and it's not going to be the same as what we're used to seeing in previous cycles.
The perpetual bid is going to start from the ETF buyers, which, if we go back to the Bitwise report, they believe that the ETF flows in 2025 are going to be bigger than the ones in 2024. This is a pretty cool finding. If they believe that the ETF flows are going to be greater in 2025 than in 2024, well, there's an interesting chart that's going around that shows the price of Bitcoin closely follows the assets under management in the ETFs. We'll see if this correlation continues to hold, but it's interesting nonetheless. As ETFs pile into Bitcoin, that means that Bitcoin's price tends to act positively towards this. Really quick, before we go into our 5th and final catalyst for why Bitcoin will go to 250K in 2025, we talk a lot about ETFs and other Bitcoin proxies on this show, but nothing replaces buying and holding actual Bitcoin in self-custody. And that's exactly why the Bitcoin way exists. Members of their team will walk you through proper 100% self-custody, step by step, so you can remove all counterparty risk, stop sharing keys with third parties, and ensure you protect your generational wealth the right way. Go to thebitcoinway.com and schedule a free 30-minute meeting with their team. Catalyst number 5, the perpetual bid. Always on buyers in the forms of nations, states, and cities. Let's go back to CJ Constantinos.
The market dynamics are now changing. And the reason that these market dynamics are changing is because of that perpetual bid that you mentioned. And we're going to see that perpetual bid come to fruition through the creation of the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, not just at the federal level. The federal government starting the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, along with Loomis's bill for accumulation, is really lighting a fire under the states. And the states are realizing, wow, if the federal government is doing this, we need to do it. But something else is happening that goes a layer deeper, and that is that it's not just the states, because the state balance sheet is not the balance sheet of the cities and the municipalities. And now the local leaders are starting to realize, well, if the state has it, if the federal government has it, we have to have it or we're going to fall behind. And one of the big benefits of cities and municipalities having a strategic Bitcoin reserve is that they're going to be able to issue municipal Bitcoin bonds. They're going to be able to issue highly rated credit debt that isn't U.S. Treasury debt, but is still backed by a U.S. state combined with Bitcoin in order to raise funds to reinvest into the community and rebuild this country's infrastructure. And what that's going to lead to is a perpetual bid that's price agnostic. The governments aren't going to try to time the market. They're simply going to dollar cost average over time as their cash flow in the form of tax revenue comes into the system. A portion will go directly into their Bitcoin strategic reserve, maybe even their Bitcoin recapitalization fund, and they'll be able to use it as a tool to integrate into their economic, fiscal, and monetary policies to benefit their citizenry and their constituents.
Subscribe so that you don't miss our episode that's coming out Sunday, which is a deep dive on Bitcoin and real estate and why you should just buy and hold Bitcoin versus getting into real estate at all. We're already seeing this shift start to happen, as Texas said that they are going to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Texas State Rep Giovanni wrote and filed the bill. And this is massive because Texas has a GDP of $2.6 trillion, which would make it the 8th largest economy in the world. Texas has the fastest growing GDP in the country, and now it's adding perfectly engineered money to its balance sheet. Bitcoin will help us grow faster and build better balance sheets as a strategic reserve asset, but it also aligns with the values of America.
If we make an announcement in 2025 and lean into Bitcoin, it's not defensive, it's not reactionary, it's progressive, it's positive. To me, supporting Bitcoin is pro-technology, it's pro-innovation, it's pro-freedom. I think Bitcoin carries a lot of the American ideals that the country was founded on. It's equal rights, equal coming and going, equal and opining. There's rules with no rulers. It's land of the free, home of the brave. It's where dreams come true. It's where you migrate towards to have future prosperity and a future you can believe in. And that's my messaging to the public and to the government is this is the most pro-American money we've ever come across. And it's pro all the ideals that I consider American and why I want to be in this country. I think that it will help aid all of the issues that active 30-year-olds, my friends and my peer class deals with in closing the deficit, strengthening the balance sheet of our country. And it will give me a lot more confidence in raising my future kids here.
If you have hope for our future and hope for our country embracing Bitcoin, then I encourage you to take a leap and to come embrace that freedom and hope by buying a ticket to BitBlockBoom, which is happening in Dallas, Texas from April 3rd through April 6th of 2025. Bitcoiners from all across the world will descend on Texas for one main reason and one main reason only, and that's freedom. They also want to come and hear from the greatest speakers in Bitcoin. Speakers like Marty Bent, Parker Lewis, Guy Swan, Gary Leland, Bob Burnett, and others like me. Your ticket is all-inclusive and gives you free access to educational workshops, as well as exclusive events where you meet your favorite Bitcoiners in person. To get $100 off your ticket, go to bitblockboom.com and type in the promo code BBB25. There are 5 catalysts that will drive Bitcoin to $250K in 2025. But the thing that we're here for is not only number go up technology, but freedom go up technology. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.